Welcome back to another exciting video lesson on community interactions. Now before we begin, make sure that you have your authentic, engaging questions written down and make sure that they connect to you personally as a learner. Don't worry about if your questions are written down on the question paper. As long as you're using 2 columns, one for questions and one for answers, you should be absolutely fine. Now we're going to begin. So before we begin, let's take a little time to review what a community is. A community is a grouping of the same species of organisms together in an area. Now, when those communities interact with one another, they make a habitat. Now, we're going to be looking at those interactions and how do communities actually interact. Any relationship in which 2 species live closely together is called symbiosis. Now, that's just a fancy way of saying that they live together. Scientists recognize 3 main classes of symbiotic, or again, symbiosis, relationships in nature: mutualism, parasitism, and commensalism. The first class of symbiosis that we'll be talking about is going to be called mutualism. And mutualism is any relationship between individuals of different species where both individuals derive a benefit. This might seem a little confusing, but don't worry. All it means is that because they're working together, they both benefit. So take the example on your screen. The bird benefits by being able to pick the bugs and get a free meal off of that zebra's back, and the zebra benefits by having the bugs being eaten off of its back. Another example is the clownfish and sea anemone. The sea anemone's sting has 2 functions: to capture prey and to protect the anemone from predators. Even so, certain fish manage to snack on anemone tentacles. The clownfish, however, is immune to anemone stings. When threatened by a predator, the clownfish will go deep into tentacles that would be deadly to most other fish. But if an anemone-eating species tries to attack its home, the sea anemone, the spunky clownfish will dart out and fiercely chase away those predators. They both benefit by having a home and protection. Another example would be the bee and the flower. The bee benefits from getting the sweet nectar, and the flower benefits by being able to give its pollen to the bee, which will then pollinate other plants of the same species. And another very well-known example is the bird and the crocodile. Now, the crocodile will open wide and the bird will be able to pick food between its teeth. The crocodile will have a free cleaning and the bird will have a free meal. They both benefit. And again, that is called mutualism, when both species benefits from being in a symbiotic relationship together. The next class of symbiotic relationships that we'll be talking about is parasitism, and it is one of my favorites. It is the one where one species benefits while the other is actually harmed. A great example of this in humans is the mosquito. We are actually being harmed, not by much, it's just a small allergic reaction, and the mosquito is gaining all the benefits. It gets the blood in order to feed and reproduce. Another example is that of the tick. That mound you see in that woman's scalp is actually a tick feasting on her blood. She is not benefiting at all from having that tick there, but that tick is benefiting by getting nutrients and energy from her blood. The organism that you see on your screen now is called a sea lamprey. It uses its hook-like mouth to attach to a side of the fish and basically do exactly what a leech does, but on a much grander scale. It actually sucks out everything that it can, and it benefits because it gets, again, like a tick or a leech, the nutrients and energy from the host organism, but the fish does not benefit, and it actually will die because of this. So not all acts of parasitism involve killing the host. So the example that you see on your screen is between 2 birds. The smaller bird, normally a native species, and a brood bird, the bigger one. So what the brood bird species does is it lays its eggs in the native bird's nest and then just takes off, never to return. Now what happens is that baby brood bird will hatch like any of the other birds in the nest, and it will trick that native species in thinking that it is actually its offspring. So it will use resources, energy, and time to feed it. But what happens with the brood birds is that they actually grow and develop at a much higher rate than the native bird species. So they actually kick out the baby birds of the original parents. This is an act of parasitism because the native bird species is being negatively affected while the parasite, in this case the brood species, is being positively affected. The third and final class of symbiotic relationships is that of commensalism. Commensalism is when one organism benefits and does not affect the other organism, either in a positive or negative way. So the example on your screen was that of a shark and fish. Those fish benefit from the protection of the shark, but the shark gains nothing from having that quote-quote posse there. Another example of commensalism would be the sea barnacle growing on the back of the sea turtle. The sea turtle is not affected either positively or negatively by the growing of the barnacle, but the barnacle is benefiting from the new water in which it can gain nutrients from. That concludes our latest video lesson on community interactions. Now, remember to have authentic, engaging questions that are personally connected to your own learning. So that means if you need to go back and rewatch this video, go ahead and do that. Make sure, though, that if you have any questions that arose during the video, you can try to answer them or bring them to class and we can answer them together. Have a great day, and we'll see you later.